Almost everyone spends their life trying to change their circumstances. But Buddhism says that is the final step, not the first. There is one invisible thing you must change before destiny can ever respond. Most people wait for better opportunities, better relationships, or better luck, never realizing they keep carrying the same mind into every new beginning. According to the deepest Buddhist wisdom, your life doesn't change because your consciousness hasn't changed. In this video, you'll discover the hidden inner shift that ancient Buddhist teachings point to, the one that helps you let go of your old self, find your true worth, and transform your destiny from within. Because the moment you change the person experiencing life, life itself begins to change. And by the end, you'll understand why nothing was ever impossible in the first place. Number 1. The greatest lie you have ever been taught is that destiny happens to you. It feels comforting to believe life simply unfolds on its own, but a quieter truth waits beneath that belief. Every unnoticed thought quietly shapes your choices long before you call them decisions. Therefore, if the same hidden patterns remain untouched, every new beginning slowly becomes another version of the past. As the Buddha taught, we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. But what if the future you fear is only repeating the identity you never questioned? Your future obeys the voice you never question. Imagine a river flowing across the earth. It never argues with the riverbed beneath it. It simply follows the shape that has already been carved. Your mind behaves the same way. Every fear you silently accept, every story you repeat about yourself, becomes the invisible path your life naturally follows. Therefore, what appears to be destiny may simply be the direction your deepest beliefs have been carrying you all along. Have you ever wondered why different years sometimes carry the same pain, wearing a different face? A man once believed he was never good enough. He changed jobs, moved to another city, surrounded himself with new people, but the same disappointments kept returning. His world appeared different, but his identity remained untouched. Therefore, life continued reflecting the person he believed himself to be. The scenery changed, but the traveler did not. Isn't it possible that the life you wish to escape is patiently waiting for a different version of you to arrive? Tonight, sit quietly for a few moments. Close your eyes. Watch your thoughts as clouds crossing a silent mountain. Do not chase them. Do not fight them. Simply notice which thought always returns first. That thought is not your enemy, but it may be the architect of the life you keep living. Therefore, stop asking, "How do I change my life?" Ask instead, "Who inside me keeps recreating it?" Reflect gently. Which belief has silently guided your choices for years? If nothing around you changed tomorrow, who would you become within? The greatest miracle is not forcing destiny to change. It is becoming someone your old destiny can no longer recognize. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, simply type, "My change begins today." 2. Why you keep living the same year. Another year passes. The calendar changes. Your surroundings shift. New goals are written with quiet hope. Yet somewhere beneath those visible changes, the same fears return, the same disappointments appear, the same emotional battles quietly begin again. It is easy to blame circumstances, but Buddhist wisdom invites a more uncomfortable question. What if life is not repeating itself? What if the same identity keeps recreating the same life? The answer may feel unsettling, but it also carries the freedom you have been searching for. The calendar changes faster than consciousness. A beautiful clock may receive polished hands, a shining face, even a new place upon the wall. But if the gears inside remain broken, every movement becomes an illusion. Your life can look different from the outside, while your inner world continues turning through the same invisible cycle. Therefore, New opportunities cannot fully transform someone who still believes the same old story about themselves. How many chapters have changed while the person reading them remained exactly the same? Think of a traveler who walks through the same forest every morning. At first, every step demands attention. Over time, the path becomes effortless because it has been walked so often. Your mind creates emotional trails in exactly the same way. Each repeated reaction makes the next one easier. Therefore, anger arrives before understanding. Fear speaks before courage. Self-doubt answers before possibility even has a chance to whisper. Who carved those inner paths that now feel impossible to leave? Before trying to change your career, your relationships, or your future, pause the next time a familiar emotion appears. Watch it without rushing to obey it. Notice how quickly your mind reaches for an old conclusion. That moment of awareness is where your freedom quietly begins. The Buddha taught that suffering continues when we cling to what feels familiar, even when it no longer serves us. Therefore, changing your destiny begins by observing your reactions instead of defending them. Ask yourself with complete honesty, which emotional pattern keeps returning whenever life becomes uncertain? Which version of yourself refuses to leave even after all these years? Perhaps what you have called safety has only been familiarity. The moment you stop protecting your old identity, your future finally finds room to become something entirely new. 3. The addiction to familiar suffering. You tell yourself you want peace. You pray for change. You dream about a lighter life. But when peace finally knocks, something inside quietly steps backward. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because suffering has become familiar. The mind often chooses what it recognizes over what can heal it. Therefore, many people do not remain trapped by life itself. They remain loyal to an identity built around old wounds. If this hidden attachment stays unseen, suffering slowly begins to feel like home. Have you ever wondered why you return to the very emotions you promised never to carry again? A quiet teaching says, known pain often feels safer than unknown peace. Imagine a bird raised inside a cage from the day it was born. One morning the cage door opens, yet the bird does not fly. The sky feels too vast. Freedom feels uncertain. The prison, though painful, feels predictable. The human heart can behave the same way. Therefore, you may cling to disappointment, fear, or self-doubt, not because they bring happiness, but because they have become familiar companions. What if the life you seek has been waiting outside a cage you no longer realize is open? Think about the person who remains in unhealthy relationships, repeatedly accepts disrespect, or abandons dreams before they begin. From the outside, these choices appear irrational, but beneath them lives a quiet belief. This is who I am. This is what I deserve. Therefore, life continues reflecting that hidden conviction. The greatest chains are rarely visible. They are woven from stories repeated so often that they begin to sound like truth. Tonight, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine holding an old stone you have carried for years. Feel its weight in your hands. Notice how familiar it has become. Now, imagine placing it gently on the ground. You do not throw it away with anger. You simply stop carrying what no longer belongs to you. The Buddha taught that suffering grows through attachment. Therefore, healing begins the moment you become curious about why you keep holding on instead of forcing yourself to let go. Ask yourself with complete honesty, what pain has quietly become part of your identity? What would freedom ask you to release? Perhaps the greatest miracle is not escaping suffering. It is discovering that without it, you are finally free to meet the person you were always becoming. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, simply type, My change begins today. 4. Identity before habit. You have probably blamed yourself for failing to stay consistent. You promised to wake earlier, speak more kindly, meditate every morning, or finally pursue the life your heart has been quietly asking for. For a few days, your determination felt real. But slowly, the old routines returned, as if they had been waiting in silence. It is tempting to call this a lack of discipline. Buddhist wisdom points somewhere deeper. Your habits are not only shaped by effort, they are guided by the person you believe yourself to be. Therefore, until that inner identity changes, every new beginning quietly drifts back toward the familiar. Could this be why your strongest intentions keep losing to your oldest beliefs? Actions follow identity more faithfully than intention. Imagine a tree whose leaves have turned brown. You could paint every leaf a brilliant shade of green, but the roots beneath the soil would remain weak. The tree might appear healthy for a moment, yet nothing essential has changed. Your life works the same way. You can force new behaviors for a while, but if your inner image still whispers, "I always fail," or "I am not worthy," your actions will eventually return to protect that story. Therefore, the roots deserve your attention before the branches. Think of someone who finally begins exercising. At first, every workout feels like a battle because they still see themselves as an unhealthy person trying to change. But another person quietly says, "I care for my body because this is who I am becoming." The actions may look similar, but the identities are completely different. One struggles against themselves, the other walks in harmony with a new belief. Which path do you think endures when motivation grows quiet? Tonight, stand before a mirror for a few moments. Do not ask, "What should I do tomorrow?" Ask instead, "Who does this reflection believe it is?" Sit with whatever answer appears. Do not judge it. Simply observe it with compassion. The Buddha reminded us that the mind shapes the path we walk. Therefore, practice becoming the person whose daily choices naturally reflect the life you seek, instead of forcing habits that your identity still resists. Ask yourself honestly, which identity are your habits protecting? What old label are you finally willing to leave behind? Every ordinary day is shaping someone. The question is not whether you are changing. The question is who you are quietly becoming. 5. Karma is repeated consciousness. Many people wait for karma to arrive someday, as though it is a distant judge keeping score of every mistake. But Buddhist wisdom reveals something far more intimate. Karma is not only what waits in the future, it is also what quietly unfolds within this very moment. Every emotion you repeat, every story you continue believing, every reaction you refuse to question becomes the seed of tomorrow's experience. Therefore, destiny is not built in a single dramatic moment. It is patiently grown through the consciousness you carry each ordinary day. If your inner world never changes, why would your future become unfamiliar? A quiet teaching reminds us, consciousness is the soil where tomorrow takes root. Imagine standing before a window at sunrise. The morning light is pure, yet the color you see depends upon the glass through which you look. If the window is stained with fear, the day appears threatening. If it is clouded by resentment, every encounter seems unfair. The sun has not changed. The world has not changed. But your perception quietly shapes your reality. Therefore, life often reflects the state of the mind that observes it. Could it be that you are not seeing the world as it is, but as your consciousness has learned to see it? Think about how your mornings begin. Before the phone rings or the world makes its demands, one familiar emotion often arrives first. For some, it is anxiety. For others, it is regret, pressure, or quiet hopelessness. That emotion becomes the lens through which every conversation and decision is filtered. Therefore, one unconscious feeling can silently guide an entire day without ever announcing its presence. Tonight, practice something simple. When a strong emotion appears, resist the urge to name it immediately. Just watch it. Notice how quickly it invites you to become it, how it asks you to speak from it, defend it, or build your identity around it. The Buddha taught that awareness creates the space where freedom becomes possible. Therefore, interrupt the old pattern before it becomes another familiar reaction. A single moment of conscious observation can change the direction of an entire day. Ask yourself gently, which emotion quietly governs your mornings? What invisible seeds are you planting through repeated thoughts? The future is already growing beneath the surface of your awareness. Change your consciousness today, and tomorrow will begin to bloom in ways your old self could never have imagined. 6. The Buddhist law beyond manifestation. Many people spend years asking the universe for a different life. They repeat hopeful words, imagine success, and wait for reality to finally answer. But when nothing changes, disappointment quietly settles into the heart. The problem is rarely the size of the dream. It is the state of the person carrying it. Buddhist wisdom offers a deeper truth. Life does not simply respond to what you desperately want. It reflects the awareness from which you live. Therefore, desire without inner transformation often becomes another form of suffering. Have you been chasing a future your present mind is not yet prepared to hold? A quiet teaching says, reality echoes being, not begging. Picture a still lake beneath the night sky. When the water rests in complete calm, the moon appears with perfect clarity. But when the surface is disturbed, the moon seems broken, even though nothing has happened to the moon itself. The disturbance exists only in the water. Your consciousness is that lake. Therefore, the quality of your inner world determines how clearly you experience the opportunities already surrounding you. The world is not always resisting you. Sometimes your restless mind cannot recognize what peaceful awareness would immediately see. Think about the person who longs for a loving relationship but continues living in fear, suspicion, or emotional emptiness. Or the person who dreams of meaningful work while believing they will never be enough. Their desires may be sincere, but their inner state quietly rejects what their words invite. Therefore, life keeps reflecting the consciousness they practice each day, instead of the future they imagine at night. This is why chasing alone rarely creates lasting change. Becoming does. Tonight, pause before asking for anything more. Sit quietly. Breathe until your attention becomes softer than your expectations. Feel each breath settle the noise within you. In that silence, notice how often your mind reaches outward before it ever looks inward. The Buddha taught that freedom begins when craving loosens its grip. Therefore, stop asking life to deliver what your consciousness is not yet ready to receive. Prepare the mind, and the path begins revealing itself naturally. Ask yourself with complete honesty, are you still chasing, or are you quietly becoming? What inner state are you broadcasting every day without realizing it? Look deeply into your own awareness. If your future stood before you today, would it recognize the mind you are living with now? Or would it patiently wait until you finally become the person who can receive it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, simply type, "My change begins today." 7. The death of the old self. The hardest part of transformation is not learning something new, it is saying goodbye to the person who has carried you until now. This is why change often feels painful. The mind mistakes growth for loss. The familiar identity begins to whisper, if you become someone different, you will lose yourself. But Buddhist wisdom gently reveals another truth. What resists change is rarely your deepest nature. It is the old identity fighting to survive. Therefore, every step toward freedom can feel uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. Could the fear you feel today be evidence that you are finally outgrowing the life that once defined you? A quiet teaching says, every awakening feels like a funeral to the ego. Imagine a snake trying to protect its old skin. What once offered protection eventually becomes a prison. The snake does not grow by decorating the old skin. It grows by leaving it behind. Your identity follows the same law. The beliefs, fears, and labels that once helped you survive may no longer help you live. Therefore, holding on to yesterday can quietly prevent tomorrow from ever arriving. Think about someone who spent years believing they were weak because of childhood criticism. As an adult, every opportunity to grow felt dangerous because success threatened the identity they had carried for so long. The struggle was never against the world. It was against a story that had become familiar. Therefore, healing began the moment they stopped asking the wounded version of themselves for permission to move forward. Tonight, close your eyes and imagine standing beside a quiet river. In your hands rests the identity you have carried for years. See yourself placing it gently upon the water. Do not reject it with anger. Thank it for helping you survive when you needed it most. But do not call it back. Let the current carry it beyond your sight. The Buddha taught that clinging creates suffering. Therefore, honor your old self with gratitude, but stop asking it to lead your future. Ask yourself honestly, which version of yourself deserves a peaceful retirement? What fear keeps asking you to remain the same? The moment you release what no longer serves you, life stops asking who you used to be and begins responding to who you are, quietly becoming. 8. The hidden shift that changes everything. Most people spend their lives waiting for one extraordinary moment that will finally change everything. They hope for the perfect opportunity, the perfect conversation, or the perfect sign. But while they search for dramatic breakthroughs, they overlook the quiet decisions that are already shaping a different future. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that destiny rarely changes with a single event. It changes through countless unseen moments of awareness. Therefore, the greatest transformation often begins long before anyone, including you, can recognize it. If you cannot see the change yet, does that mean nothing is happening? A quiet teaching says, invisible roots create visible forests. Imagine standing before a mountain just before sunrise. The sky is still dark, yet something has already changed. Birds begin to stir. The air grows softer. Light is approaching, even though the sun has not appeared. Dawn always arrives before it becomes visible. Your inner life follows the same rhythm. Therefore, the most important changes often happen beneath the surface, where no applause can reach and no one else can see. Are you abandoning your path simply because the sunrise has not yet reached your eyes? Think of someone who chooses patience instead of anger for the first time. Nothing dramatic happens that day. Their career does not suddenly change. Their relationships remain imperfect. Yet inside, a different person has quietly taken one step forward. That single moment becomes easier to repeat tomorrow. Therefore, what looked insignificant begins creating a completely different future, one peaceful decision at a time. Tonight, sit in silence for 1 minute. Do not chase your thoughts. Simply notice the small space between one thought ending and another beginning. That quiet space has always been there, but your attention has rarely rested within it. The Buddha taught that awareness is the doorway to freedom. Therefore, stop measuring your growth only by visible results. Measure it by the moments when you notice yourself choosing wisdom instead of habit. Ask yourself gently, what silent change has already begun within you? Where are you demanding proof before the roots have had enough time to grow? The greatest miracles rarely arrive with noise. They unfold quietly inside the heart until one ordinary day, the outer world finally begins to reflect what has already become true within. 9. Freedom begins in emptiness. The moment life becomes quiet, many people immediately reach for something to fill the silence. A phone, a conversation, another goal, another distraction. Empty space feels uncomfortable because it removes everything that usually keeps the mind busy. But Buddhist wisdom offers a surprising truth. Emptiness is not something to fear. It is the place where old identities begin to loosen their grip, allowing deeper understanding to quietly rise. Therefore, if you rush to fill every empty moment, you may also be running from the very transformation your heart has been waiting for. What if silence is not empty at all, but gently trying to speak to you? A quiet teaching says, "The empty bowl receives what the full one cannot." Imagine a peaceful valley at dawn. There is no noise demanding attention, yet every sound travels farther because the space is open. A crowded city cannot carry an echo in the same way. Your mind is no different. When it is overflowing with worry, endless planning, and constant stimulation, wisdom has nowhere to settle. Therefore, the answers you seek often arrive only after the inner noise begins to fade. Could it be that life has already been whispering, but your mind has been too crowded to hear it? Think about someone who finally lets go of a painful relationship. Their first instinct is often to replace the emptiness immediately. They search for another distraction because stillness feels unfamiliar. But the deepest healing rarely begins with replacement. It begins with presence. Therefore, the empty space they once feared slowly becomes the place where self-respect, clarity, and real peace begin to take root. Tonight, give yourself one deep and unhurried breath. Rest your attention on it without trying to improve the moment. Do not search for a special feeling. Do not force peace to appear. Simply remain with what is here. The Buddha taught that freedom is discovered by seeing reality clearly, not by escaping it. Therefore, after releasing an old habit, an old fear, or an old identity, allow space before reaching for something new. Growth needs room to breathe. Ask yourself with complete honesty, what are you afraid silence might reveal? What have you been filling instead of feeling? The emptiness you resist may become your greatest teacher, because only an open heart has room for a completely new destiny. 10. When destiny finally looks like luck. One day, people may look at your life and quietly say, "You were lucky." They will notice your peace, your steady mind, or the opportunities that seem to arrive at the perfect time. But they will never see the silent moments that shaped them. They will not see the mornings when you chose awareness instead of anxiety, the conversations where you refused to answer anger with anger, or the nights when you remained patient, even though nothing appeared to be changing. Therefore, what others call luck is often the visible result of countless invisible choices. Could it be that your future is already being built in moments no one else will ever witness? A quiet teaching says, peace prepares opportunities long before they arrive. Imagine a bamboo forest. For years, almost nothing seems to happen above the ground. Many would believe the seed has failed. Yet beneath the surface, an unseen network of roots is growing stronger every day. When the bamboo finally rises, it appears to happen all at once. But the visible growth began long before anyone could celebrate it. Your transformation follows the same law. Therefore, never measure your progress only by what the world can see. Think about the person who has spent months learning patience, forgiving old wounds, and watching their thoughts without becoming them. Outwardly, life may still look ordinary. But when difficulty finally arrives, they respond with clarity instead of panic. Others admire their calm as if it appeared overnight. They never realize that peace was practiced long before it was tested. That is how destiny quietly changes, from within, long before circumstances reveal it. Tonight, close your eyes and picture your future self standing before you. Notice the gentle smile on their face. It is not there because life became effortless. It is there because the mind is no longer imprisoned by fear, resentment, or constant craving. The Buddha taught that a disciplined mind becomes a source of lasting happiness. Therefore, protect your consciousness more carefully than your circumstances, because your mind is the place where every future first begins to take shape. Ask yourself honestly, what invisible work have you been neglecting while chasing visible success? Would the person you are becoming thank you for the choices you are making today? Real success is not measured by how much life gives you. It is measured by how little your peace depends on what life takes away. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you are not sure what to say, simply type, "My change begins today." Bonus 11. Your destiny was never outside you. Perhaps the greatest surprise is this. No miracle suddenly descended from the sky. The world did not become perfect. Difficult people still exist. Uncertainty still visits every human life. Yet everything feels different because the one experiencing life is no longer the same. This is the quiet realization Buddhist wisdom has been pointing toward from the very beginning. Destiny was never hidden somewhere ahead of you. It was patiently awakening within your own awareness. Therefore, the life you have been waiting for begins the moment you stop waiting for life to rescue you. What if this entire journey was never about changing your future, but about discovering the person who could finally live it? A quiet teaching says, when the observer awakens, reality answers differently. Imagine looking through a dusty window for many years. The landscape outside appears dull, distant, and lifeless. One day, you wipe the glass clean. The mountains did not move. The sunrise did not become brighter. The world remained exactly where it had always been. But your vision changed. Therefore, everything appeared new without the world needing to become different. The deepest transformation is not changing reality. It is seeing reality without the old stories that once covered it. For a moment, place one hand gently over your heart. Close your eyes and ask, who am I without yesterday's story? Do not rush to answer. Let the question settle quietly within you. Beneath every fear, every label, and every disappointment, there is a still awareness that has never been broken. The Buddha taught that freedom begins when we stop clinging to the self we have imagined. Therefore, stop chasing another life. Become another consciousness, and the life before you will begin to reveal possibilities your old identity could never recognize. Before you leave, carry one final question into your own silence. What if your destiny has always been the quality of your awareness? Which story are you willing to let end today? Who will take the next step after this moment? If this message spoke to something deep within you, let it become more than inspiration. Practice it. Protect your mind. Build a calm and disciplined way of living that no circumstance can easily shake. Because the life you keep chasing has been searching for you all along, but it could only recognize the person you finally chose to become. Quick summary. The greatest lie about destiny. Destiny is not something that simply happens to you. It is something your unconscious identity keeps creating. Most decisions are shaped by beliefs you rarely question. Changing your future begins by changing the one who is making those choices. Awareness is the first step toward true transformation. Why you keep living the same year. Many people mistake the passing of time for personal growth. Without changing your inner patterns, every new year becomes another version of the last. Growth begins when you recognize repetitive emotional habits. A new life requires a new level of consciousness. The addiction to familiar suffering. People often cling to familiar pain because it feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. This hidden attachment quietly blocks healing and personal evolution. Lasting peace begins when you stop identifying with your suffering. Freedom starts where emotional attachment ends. Identity before habit. Habits are only the visible result of a much deeper identity. If your self-image remains unchanged, your behaviors will eventually return to old patterns. Real transformation happens from the inside out. Become the person first, and your actions will naturally follow. Karma is repeated consciousness. Karma is not simply about actions, it is about the repeated state of your mind. Every recurring thought and emotional reaction shapes your future experience. Conscious awareness interrupts these unconscious cycles. Your destiny changes when your consciousness changes. The Buddhist law beyond manifestation. Life reflects your inner state more than your desires. Simply wishing for a different future cannot overcome an unchanged mind. When your awareness becomes calmer and wiser, new opportunities naturally appear. Inner transformation always comes before outer results. The death of the old self. Growth requires letting go of the identity that no longer serves you. The ego resists change because it mistakes transformation for loss. Releasing your old self creates space for wisdom to emerge. Every awakening begins with surrender, the hidden shift that changes everything. The greatest changes happen quietly before they become visible. Small shifts in awareness create lasting changes in your life over time. Patience allows inner growth to mature into outer transformation. Every peaceful thought shapes a more peaceful future. Freedom begins in emptiness. Silence and emptiness are not signs of loss. They are spaces where wisdom enters. Constant distraction keeps you from discovering your true nature. Inner peace grows when you stop filling every empty moment. Presence is the foundation of lasting freedom. When destiny finally looks like luck, what others call luck is often the result of years of inner transformation. A peaceful mind recognizes opportunities that fear cannot see. Consistent awareness quietly prepares you for success. True fortune belongs to those who first master themselves. Your destiny was never outside you. The world changes because your way of seeing it changes. Real destiny is shaped from within, not granted from outside. When your consciousness evolves, your experiences naturally evolve with it. Change yourself, and your destiny can no longer remain the same. Perhaps the greatest illusion is believing that destiny is waiting somewhere in the future, when in truth, it has always been quietly unfolding through the person you choose to become each day. Every thought you nurture, every attachment you release, and every moment of awareness you cultivate reshapes the direction of your life. As Zen philosophy reminds us, the path does not appear when you reach the destination. It appears the moment you begin walking with an awakened mind. Stop asking life to become different before you do. When your mind becomes peaceful, your choices become wiser. When your choices become wiser, your destiny begins to change without force. Remember, the person who conquers the mind no longer fears the future, because every step becomes the path itself. So before you leave, ask yourself this one question. If I truly changed the way I see myself today, what impossible future could suddenly become possible tomorrow? If this wisdom inspired you, like and share this video. Share your opinion in the comment box for more inspiring Buddhist insights on living a peaceful life.